Hello and welcome to In the Picture. I am Miles Cardan and joining me is...
Awesome, Shane Jones.
Today we are bringing you another episode of Does It Hold Up?
Does it hold up?
Can you dig it? Those who have seen the 1979 film The Warriors will understand that reference. And that is the movie that we are going to be talking about today. So again, just does it hold up is kind of a broad question and it can be up to interpretation. Basically, what we are going to judge that by is basically, can the Warriors still be enjoyed the same way it was enjoyed in 1979 when it came out? And just to give some of you guys a background on the movie, or just a synopsis of the movie, it follows a bunch of gangs in New York. Well, one gang in particular, the Warriors, and all the gangs get together to listen to the leader of the largest gang. And during that meeting, the leader is shot and killed, and the Warriors get blamed for it. And then the rest of the movie is the Warriors trying to dodge all the other gangs as a hit has basically been put out on them. And then they try to escape back to their territory, which is on Coney Island. So just to get right into it, I guess, there were a couple things that stood out to us that we're just going to kind of brush out of the way, that didn't necessarily hold up or don't age well. The first one I noticed was just some of the slurs that are thrown out there. Now, mind you, these are gang members, and it kind of fits, but I think today those slurs would be, or felt as like a writer or a director would be much more cautious in if they chose to use certain words. But again, these are kind of, the gang members, kind of poor low lives. So it fits the characters. But again, I can see some people being taken aback by a couple of language choices. Shane, was there anything else you noticed?
I'll just going off of that. I mean, yeah, they're gang members, yet kind of tame to what you would think gang members are nowadays. But yeah, they go for those hard words that would make pretty much anybody besides, I guess, like Quentin Tarantino second guess their choice in writing that. The biggest thing that I don't think held up for me is the like main antagonist guy, the guy who kind of framed the Warriors for shooting the dude in the beginning. I just thought he was kind of goofy, and all his acting and everything was just kind of, I don't know. He was kind of like a weird Mad Max villain in a way.
Well, here's my take on that character, which is like, now, because I watched the last time I watched this film was probably like at least 10 years ago, and I remember his character very vividly, and I thought he was in the movie way much more than he was. Like, he was probably only in it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And when he is on screen, it's just like, because that's just like this weaselly little guy, and you just love to hate him. And so for me, he works because he's kind of like a Joffrey in a sense. And then at the end, when he gets stabbed in the wrist, just like he loses it. Like, he just turns into a big blubbering crybaby. But yeah, I get that, definitely. There is a lot of, like, the dialogue isn't awe-inspiring. Surprise. A lot of the acting is pretty awful. But those criticisms, I believe, were probably present when it came out in 79. And as well as one other controversy, potentially, would be just kind of the violence towards the police officers, because the gang members are at odds with the police and they do fight with them in a couple scenes. But again, that would have been controversial back in 79. So I don't think that necessarily applies to kind of the does it hold up critique. But that's really it. Was there anything else?
No.
Yeah, for me, that was really it. So we want to get into basically everything that we thought was great and makes this movie so enjoyable to watch all these years later. Just kind of start the beginning, I guess, just from the intro. I remember the first time I saw it, the thing that just really hooked me was just seeing all those gangs. It was just so fun seeing all the different uniforms that the gangs had, and there's actually, I picked up just on the second time around, there's some really smart filmmaking at the beginning. When their warriors are on the subway and you're intercutting with all these other gangs going to this gathering, the camera keeps switching to a shot of the subway map, and you can see basically how far the warriors are having to travel, and it establishes a geography. And when the shit hits the fan later on, you really realize how deep into enemy territory that they are. So that was just kind of, there's a lot of smart filmmaking in this, and that's just one example.
Yeah, and I mean, the movie doesn't open up with super outdated music. I guess it they chose well. I guess they chose kind of classic rock going on in the background, and it was nice. I think the music held up quite a bit, unlike our last episode of like the never ending story, that intro song.
Like there's a lot of like synthesizer type music, and a lot of times that's very dated. Mm-hmm. But for this, it like, I don't know, just the way it was used very effectively, and I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah. And then we get to a scene that I don't think I was quite impressed the first time I saw it. Long story short, for some reason, my 8th grade teacher showed us this movie, and I have no idea how they got away with showing us a rated R movie, but I don't even know why we watched this, to be honest. But we did, and that was the last time I've seen it. But the scene where all the gangs are together in the park, just you could see hundreds of people. That was really cool to look at for me. That didn't really have an impact when I was younger, but now seeing that and seeing all the people, the extras and all that stuff that we don't really see in modern film without being CGI'd characters, was really cool.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed, especially with the gang leader, the Cyrus, when he's giving that speech to unite all the gang members, that reminded me, or there's another scene that reminds me of that scene, and it's when Morpheus is giving the speech to the people of Zion in The Matrix Reloaded. Just like his delivery of that and everything is just like really close, and how he's like raising his hands up. Yeah. It's like, I'd be very shocked if Lawrence Fishburne or the Wachowskis or somebody within that creative team was not referencing that deliberately, or was not inspired by that deliberately. It's kind of like one of those little fun things that you notice. Mm-hmm. I really like, one of the things I really like about this movie, and I think makes it work so well, is the constant tension. Is like every single time they meet somebody new, there's a new tension, because everybody is a potential enemy. So then it's like, okay, are these people out to get me? That's the first question that kind of raises the tension. And then the yes or no, will just kind of bring on, if it's no, then they move on, it's fine. But then they meet somebody else and you start all over again. And if it's a yes, then it's like, okay, now how do we deal with this new roadblock that we've encountered, this new obstacle to overcome? And the way they set up those scenes, I think, were really done well.
Yeah, and I mean, that tension is kind of what moves the movie along. It's a pretty simple story. Get from point A to point B, and lots of obstacles in between. But the whole story is just kind of go, go, go. And when they lose a person, they just keep going and just go, go, go. And that's really what kind of made the movie flow and flow in a nice pace.
Mm-hmm. And it does have a pretty quick pace. I actually, one thing I would imagine, like when it came out, because people were accustomed to slower paced films, is that the pace of this movie just probably seemed like way faster than it does today. That's probably one thing it's lost a little bit in its age, but it's a very well paced movie and it moves along very nicely. I would say like it's one big chase sequence essentially, and in that instance, like I would be bold enough to say like this was kind of the Fury Road of its time.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I mean, just to make that parallel, like there's a few movies that can just be described as one big chase sequence, and this one fits the bill. Another point on the tension is that it's not just the tension from all these outside forces trying to get them. There's also conflict within the group itself. And there's one character in particular who's very crude, crass, and violent towards women. And like, I was kind of nervous, like watching, like, oh God, like, can I not like this movie anymore?
Yeah.
But he ends up getting what's coming to him. Like the movie's basically like, yeah, this guy's behaving this way, but no, we're not endorsing his behavior. And yes, he's gonna get what he deserves. And so that was handled very well also. Was there any, before I ramble on too much longer, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, we could go into the action a little bit. Mm-hmm. I thought the fight choreography was pretty good for its time. I mean, it's not anything like John Wick or something like that we've kind of had lots of time to sharpen up and get better at, but it was all pretty good to me. There's some pretty violent scenes with weapons and stuff like that.
Is there any one scene in particular that stands out?
I like that scene where the warriors are fighting the roller skate guys in the bathroom, kind of towards the end.
Yeah, that's what I was like, holy crap! Like a lot of what I'm seeing would be perfectly cool, like in a movie today, because I mean it was just brutal.
Yeah. Throwing guys through stalls and into mirrors and all of that stuff.
Yeah, their heads getting just like thrown into the walls and smashing through stuff.
Yeah, none of it really looked like that, like fake WWE kind of choreography.
It's like I rewatched not too long ago The French Connection, which is like more early 70s rather than late 70s, I think. And there's like a scene where I think it was Gene Hackman. He goes to like kick a guy. He's beating him up, and he kicks this guy. And you can totally tell the kick isn't anywhere like near the guy's face, but you got the the sound effect and the guy, and it's like, oh gosh. But like everything here just like connected, and it was really well shot. And the stakes, for all this action are really real, because not all the warriors get out of there alive. There are casualties along the way, and so you really feel the stakes and the tension, and I just love all of that. Okay. So, I think that pretty much covers most of it. You think so, Gene?
Yep. So, Mr. Miles, does it hold up?
I am happy to say that The Warriors holds up beautifully, and just as I'm more aware of what makes a movie work now than I did before. Like I have a greater appreciation for The Warriors now than I did 10 years ago.
Right. And kind of what we were talking about earlier with this movie being controversial for the gang violence and all of that stuff. That kind of dates it a little bit, because this is kind of typical violence that you see in PG-13 movies. I mean, every single Marvel movie has this kind of violence in it. So is it like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Hostel, Saw, those kind of movies that were shocking? Yes, I think it was of its time, but now, I don't think so. But overall, the story holds up, the characters hold up, the dialogues, here and there, but for the most part, I think it holds up. And yes, I Enjoyed this movie watching it today, probably as much as I did when I was a little eighth grader, but I don't remember.
I'd also like to point out we watched the director's cut. I do not know if you can find the theatrical cut, especially on HD or in HD. But we had a Blu-ray of the director's cut. There are a few subtle differences from the theatrical cut. The main thing is that there's transitions between scenes where they freeze frame and it goes into like a comic book strip. And the reason why Walter Hill, the director, did that because that's kind of how he viewed the film, as like a live action comic book in the first place. And so in the director's cut, he wanted to double down on that. And he also put in the opening crawl with drawing the comparison to the Greek story of where the Greeks have their commander killed and they're trapped behind the Persian forces and they have to fight their way out. And so that's was the inspiration for this film as well. So yeah, there you go. The Warriors. If you've seen it and wanted to revisit it, we encourage it. If you've never seen it and just listened to all of our spoilers, we still encourage you to go and watch it. Yeah, that's it. So until next time, this has been In the Picture, and you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and iTunes, all under the In the Picture podcast tag. So, subscribe. All right. Peace.